Hey, Jose, how you doing?
Hey, not bad, guy. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's good to see you again, particularly after the Urban Winery event, which was such a great success for you all. I'm pleased that we're going to be going through your wines, finding out about you as the winemaker and how you see your and Vagabonds fit within the industry as a whole. So, fill me in. Tell me about yourself. How did you get involved in wine?
Okay, so I mean, as a career, I've come to it a bit late. So I went to study winemaking at Plumpton College down near Brighton, in south of England, and I did that in 2016, and qualified in 2019. And have been working around the UK industry since then. But really, wine for me goes back to childhood. I'm half Spanish. Grew up in England, but all my father's side, all my family are based in Spain, and they work in some work growing grapes, and some are winemakers. And wine has always been around on that side of the family, and so from a very early age, sort of got very aware of the rhythms and the life of those that work in wine. So it was always there. And then with the UK wine industry taking off, and me not particularly enjoying the career I was doing at the time, there was a opportunity to move across and study, and took the plunge. And yeah, here I am, winemaker at Vagabond now.
So, what do you, rest of your family think, particularly with the background in Spanish wines? It's very different, obviously. You think of big, bold reds. What do they make of the lighter English style?
Well, yeah. To be honest, the guys in my family, some of the younger generation of winemakers, are actually part of the movement in Spain, trying to push towards the lighter style of things. So one of them, Danny, and ComandoG and Couto from Fedellos to Couto up in the north, they're particularly pushing these lighter styles, lower alcohols, fresher, more acidity, lighter reds. So in a way, actually, the wines that I've taken over to them from England, it's sort of it's sort of something they almost covet, really. To be honest, to be able to get that sort of freshness and acidity in a wine is something they could only dream of. So yeah, it's quite a nice synergy, and we have lots of fun when we're discussing the wines.
Well, you will do, and particularly as you'll both be growing very different grape varieties due to the different climates and so forth. So it must be very refreshing for them to get a completely different style and take on it, as you're saying.
Yeah, it is, and that, in fact, actually, that they weren't well versed in UK viticulture or winemaking, but as they know the country, they're sort of, they're full of admiration, really, of people that can manage to do it in this country, because they know how hard it is in their country, even with a little bit of rain and everything. So having the island weather that we do, and the lack of sunshine, they're constantly impressed at the quality that comes out of this country. So yes, it says good things about what we're doing in the UK. If winemakers of that caliber in Spain are suitably impressed by some of the stuff coming up.
Well, particularly as you say, because it's not throughout the whole of England. It's not throughout the whole of southern England. It is small pockets, because we're such a densely populated island as it is. Not huge amounts of land. I mean, Spain's so much bigger, and there's so much more freedom and flexibility to explore without all of the weather constraints that we have, despite the benefits of perhaps a slightly cooler climate than Spain, at least. But let's jump into some wines. So where would you like to start?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, probably start just saying a little bit about Vagabonds. So we're 2010. We started off as a wine bar in Fulham, and we have the enomatic machines where you get to try a little bit of wine. 150 different wines in the bar. You can try a little bit. And it's a really successful concept. And in 2017, they opened another store. Well, they've opened a few more after that, but in 2017, they opened one in Battersea Power Station. And at that time, the UK wine industry was doing very well. So as a way of making that extra connection with the guests, the owner wanted to put in a winery and start producing his own wine and sort of complete the story and the connection. So in 2017, put the winery in. So we've got a winery in Battersea Power Station, Vagabond, at the back of the bar. It's actually quite integrated into the bar, not even at the back. But we gives us the capacity to make about 15,000 bottles of wine from there. And what we enjoy to do there is to experiment, and that's the nice thing about being an urban winery, is you get to experiment. We don't own our own vineyards, so we get to go out, and as you were saying just then about having, you know, how UK has these pockets of suitable areas where we can grow grapes, being able to access different grapes from different areas and different pockets and explore those different terroirs of the UK. It sounds a bit pretentious to talk in those terms, but we are starting to discover those ideas. So having an urban winery where we're not set with one vineyard but have access to lots of different vineyards suits our experimental vision. And then being a little bit smaller than a lot of producers, so only producing 15,000 bottles, we're often picking smaller amounts than some big producers, which allows us to make very, very last minute picking decisions. And that's one of the biggest quality drivers in the smaller wineries and urban wineries and things like that, being able to be quick on your feet and make these decisions very last minute, which is the biggest decision of the year. That fruit that comes in and when you pick it is the biggest driver of quality that there is. It's the highest point of quality in the whole process. Everything you do as a winemaker after that degrades the quality and skill of a winemaker to get to the wine without degrading that quality as much as possible. But you'll never push the quality up from the grape quality. So being able to just react quickly to picking decisions is something that sort of sets us apart. So we don't have a lot of space in the winery, so we don't make which the UK is sort of getting known for now is traditional method sparkling. But we do make a sparkling wine. We're going to start with that. This is so in the glass here. You should have the Pet Knot. So the Pet Knot is rather maybe a bit too cleverly named for its own good. It's called Pet Knot because it's not a pet nat. A pet nat being a sparkling wine that's made by bottling a wine before it's finished fermenting for the first time. Whereas this is more inspired by the Italian method called col fondo. Col fondo literally means, well, it comes from the Italian con il fondo, which literally means with the bottom, and that means with the lees. So you'll notice in the glass it's cloudy. So this is it's a non-disgorged sparkling wine, and it's made with 2 fermentations. And another key point is that the second fermentation is done with about half the amount of enrichment that you would do for a traditional method wine, which gives us about half the amount of fizz. So it's only lightly pétillant on the tongue, so it doesn't have that aggressive mousse that gets in the way of some of the flavors. And it's a very fruit-forward focused sort of wine. So it's made with Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir coming from a blend of different vineyards, some from Oxfordshire with some German clone Pinot Noir and Pinot Noir Precoce. So there's a bit of Precoce in there. And then some Pinot Noir Champagne clone from Hidden Spring, a vineyard in Sussex. And each of those different types of Pinot Noir bring a different character to this wine and something to the table. So rather than it's an early release sparkling wine. So we're not aging this on lees. This is 2022. You've got it in the glass. So we release it fairly early to give all that, make it all about the fruit and the fruit expression, but it has the complexity from the lees in it as well. All the wines that we make in Battersea, we make in a what I like to think of as a transparent way. I like to be transparent in my winemaking, not adhering to necessarily any particular formula or philosophy, but to at every point in the process to make sure everything I'm doing, I definitely need to do. So there's sort of lightness attached. So if I don't feel that I need to inoculate with a commercial yeast, I don't, but I'm not against it, but I tend not to. Also, I don't fine and I don't filter the wines if I don't need to. So these are all quite low intervention wines. I hesitate to ever call them natural. That's not what I do. I use sulphites and things like that. But that's a bit of a background. And then when we smell this wine, immediately, as well as a touch of smokiness, there's a lot of fruit there. I get a lot of watermelon, some peachiness, some berry fruit, and that's what this wine's about. It's not about huge complexity that you get from a traditional method. It's about showcasing the fruit and giving a really pleasant summer's drink that's refreshing, but not too something that you have to think too hard about.
I was going to say, it's you get that immediately on the nose, and then obviously trying a little bit about just how fresh it is. As wonderful fruit, and really like bright citrus, green apple. It's very rewarding. I mean, I think this would, even though we're still kind of in summer, this is definitely a late afternoon, sun's going down wine, because it's just it's got that crispness, as I say, and a nice bit of acidity as well, just to give it some defining edge.
Yeah, it's got, so it's not, you know, searing as some of the traditional methods, but it has got that backbone from the Sussex Champagne Clone Pinot Noir, and that just gives a nice framework for the other clones, to the other Pinot Noir, and where a lot of that berry fruit has come from. And we leave this macerating on the skins for a little bit to draw that flavor. You'll notice it's quite a deep color. It's not a pale rosé in color. I want that flavor and to come from the skins and give that texture. So it's a textural sparkling as well as, you know, flavorful. So it's got those leesy textures. It's got the texture a little bit from the skins, a tiny bit of grip, but because it doesn't, most important, it doesn't have that high fizz, so it's not clashing. So it's a very approachable drink, something that can be, you know, is refreshing, something and something that you can always go back for sort of another glass. It's that sort of thing, and it's not too high on alcohol, things like that. So it's supposed to be a fun drink. It's not supposed to be too seriously. It's at a price point that's more, you know, this retails at around 18 to 20 pounds. So it's not, you know, up in the 30s and 40s like the traditional methods. So it's yeah, it's something that has been really popular in the bars, and when we get people to try it, they're a bit struck at first, because it's not, you know, it's a bit different in appearance, you know, having that cloudy nature. But once people have a try of it, it's a very easy wine to sell.
I'm not surprised, because it's very approachable. It's just a very nice, easy drinking wine to have. Can you just fill us a little bit on the label then? You've got the animal on the front. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so the brand of Vagabond is the fox, and that's really to represent our adventurous spirit, really. The animal being a countryside animal that has come to the urban environment. Notably, if you live in the city, you see quite a few of them around, and it's a creature that has to adapt. Bit of a loner, not loved by everyone, but someone a bit of a survivor, and has to be creative on its feet to try and discover ways of surviving and thriving. So it's a sort of an ethos that we hold on to in Vagabond, and it's something that sort of drives us to be experimental and not worried to be different. And yeah, so it's sort of the underlying thing that underpins all of these wines and the philosophy that we approach things with.
I just noticed that now you've said that on each bottle is this, I'm presuming, the same animal in a slightly different position.
Yeah, we got different. We got an artist that drew them differently. Some are the same fox, but in a negative way that sort of gives a rise. We can talk about that. The foxes with the white rather than the black, they're the skin contact wines, and so it's there's a little theme going throughout. But yeah, so it's all sort of a different approach to the fox to give a different sort of visual insight into the sort of different character of it.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's move on to our next one then.
Yeah, sure. So the next wine I think we were going to try in the lineup is the Dios Mio, and so this is made from Bacchus. This is 100% Bacchus, and this wine comes from the fact that I have a difficult relationship with Bacchus. I find that Bacchus as a variety is hugely expressive and very aromatic. It's a wonderful grape in terms of being a commercial success, because it's one of these varieties that's so aromatic that consumers, when they come to it, it's really lovely to see. You can describe the flavors that they're going to get out of the glass and the aromas, and it hits them in the face, so much so that they don't have to go looking for them, and that immediately makes the consumer very comfortable. They don't feel like they don't understand it, which can often be a barrier between people who aren't necessarily as involved in wine as you or I are. And that ease of connection with the wine is something that makes Bacchus a really popular grape. However, as a winemaker and a wine drinker, I struggle with it often being smashed in the face with these aromas of floral aromas and citrus, and often lacking a lot on the palate and being very thin, and it doesn't really follow through. So my aim with this wine was to sort of, to sort of see what I could do to make a wine out of this variety that I liked, that I could drink. And it was inspired very much by drinking wines and visiting Sicily, where they use a grape called Catarratto. And often they use a little touch of a little small percentage of skin contact in those wines, to just not to make orange wines as we know them, but just to add texture, add complexity of flavors, to rein in some of the primary aromatics, and just create a slightly more grown up, slightly more complex, slightly more well-rounded drink. So that was the idea. Now, the reason it's called Dios Mio is that, so Bacchus, the god of wine, Dios Mio means my God in Spanish. So it's that connection with the variety, but also the fact that when I was making this, it was a bit of an experiment. And when you say Dios Mio in Spanish, it can be positive or negative, in that sort of, oh my God, sort of, oh my God, I've ruined this, or oh my God, it's brilliant. And that's kind of what it was, sort of every couple of weeks going in. On one point I was almost going to throw the whole batch down the drain. It was gone so skew whiff, without getting into sort of technical wine terms. But then it came round, and given time, and barrels are an amazing thing. This was aged in old oak Burgundian barrels. And it's amazing what happened after one. It came round, and what we've got for me here is an expression of Bacchus that has those cooling cards. It has that elderflower. It has that little bit of passion fruit as well. A lot of but then I get other complex aromas that come from the skins, and that I get a bit of jasmine, some ginger spice comes through with that. And then on the palate, you get the textural elements that come out from the skin, a little bit of development and texture from the old barrels, and that texture helps to carry the drink through the experience, through on the palate for a lot longer, so it doesn't disappear off. And it also enables the wine to stand up a little bit to food as well, whereas Bacchus can often not. It's a little bit too thin on the palate for that, and this just elevates the Bacchus to something a little bit more complex for me.
It's also got a bit more weight than I expected on the palate. As you say, sometimes they can be a little thin, but this hasn't. It's got a nice texture to it. It coated the tongue well. You got a lot of the fresh fruits, as you're saying, but then due to what you've been discussing, there's a bit more development to it. It wasn't as thin as I was expecting. It's had a really nice texture to it, and it actually felt rather full as well, surprisingly.
Yeah, well, a combination of the skins and then the maturation in oak. Yeah, I mean, oak barrels for a lot of people are sort of getting more and more anti-oak these days. I don't use any new oak, although a little bit of judicious new oak is never a problem. I think for the acidity profile and the tightness that we tend to get in English fruit, smaller format oak barrels are wonderful for rounding off and adding weight and texture to our fruit. And so yeah, they work absolutely wonderful things for being able to build up these wines and layer flavors and textures, and also the skin's important as well. Is add a nice way that these you tend to find with skin contact wines is add this salinity to the finish, and this a little not pleasant sort of slight bitterness. All makes it sort of enticing again with food and wines to drink with food. So it has that development on the palate, and it's not just all about the fruit. It has this journey that you go on with it. So yeah, I'm pleased with it. We'll keep tinkering with it. I never presume to have made a perfect wine. This is the second edition vintage that we've done with this wine, and we play around with different amounts of how percentage of how much we do skin contact, how long it stays in barrel, and there's always adjustments and feelings you can get, and every vintage is obviously different in this country. That's a wonderful thing about the UK. We have wonderful vintage variation, and yeah, so it'd be a continuing thing to play with, to try and see what we can eke out of Bacchus and give it another sort of different sort of exposure.
Yeah, it's a good take on it. It's a nice, as you said, development. It's trying something a bit different and creating your own wine and your own version of that. That's a really nice, easy drinking wine is how I'd summarize that. It's just a very, very pleasant plonk.
Yeah, and it's sort of a bit of a lot of people, when you see the skin contact or orange wines, it can put a few people off. And we all know that these wines can be a little bit for the consumer that's used to sort of more classic commercial style white wines, they can be a bit take the palate a bit of a shock to the palate, whereas this, just with a small amount of skin contact to add texture, is actually a nice sort of approachable, almost a sort of a gateway drug to the skin contacts that are out there, and we get into some more later on in the range, but this is very much at Vagabond we categorize our wines where we put them in the store, and for white wines it's crisp, aromatic, rich, or skin contact. And it's difficult to say with this one where you would put it. We do have it in skin contact, but it could easily go down as a sort of textural, crisp white wine, or an aromatic wine for that. So it does fit the bill for lots of occasions.
I completely agree.